Imagine waiting 3 years for something. 3 years of military service, 3 years of silence on variety shows, 3 years of watching behind-the-scenes clips and old episodes just to feel like BTS was still right there with you. And then on April 23rd, 2026, it finally came back. Run BTS 2.0 Episode 1. The boys were back. All 7 of them, crammed into a vacation house with 3 bedrooms, 0 plans, and an unlimited supply of chaos energy. But here is the thing about this episode that nobody is really talking about. While RM, Suga, V, and J-Hope were somehow all fighting over the same bedroom, while Jungkook wandered off and accidentally claimed an entire room for himself, while the whole house was on the verge of collapsing from the combined chaotic energy of 6 fully grown men doing absolutely nothing sensibly, Jimin was doing something completely different. And that something, that is exactly what made this episode unforgettable for anyone who has followed him for years. So today we are going to break down Run BTS 2.0 Episode 1 in full, and we are going to do it through Jimin's eyes. Because whether you realize it or not, this episode told you everything you need to know about who ParkJimin is in 2026, as an artist, as a friend, and as a person who has grown in ways that 3 years of distance made impossible to ignore. Let's start from the very beginning. When you think about the original Run BTS, what do you remember? You remember the chaos, obviously, the games, the penalties, the screaming. But you also remember the specific energy that only BTS can create when they are together with 0 pressure to perform. No stage, no choreography, no Billboard charts to chase. Just 7 people who genuinely, deeply care about each other, being ridiculous on camera for the entertainment of millions. That energy went on hiatus in February 2023. And it is worth sitting with that fact for a second before we go any further. Run BTS did not just pause, it paused at a moment when BTS was at an inflection point. One by one, the members entered mandatory military service. Jin went first, then J-Hope, then RM, V, Jimin, Suga and Jungkook followed. For 2 years, ARMY watched individually. Solo albums dropped. Solo tours happened. Jimin released Muse, went on his own sold-out world tour, dominated charts. But the thing that Run BTS represented, that unfiltered, unscripted chemistry of all 7 together, was frozen. And then came 2026. Arirang dropped in March. The world tour kicked off at Goyang Stadium in April. Tokyo Dome happened on April 17th and 18th, where Jimin delivered back-to-back performances that ARMY is still processing. And then, just 5 days after the second Tokyo Dome show, Run BTS 2.0 Episode 1 went live. Think about that timeline for a second. Jimin performed in front of tens of thousands of people at Tokyo Dome. Full production, full set list, the kind of stage presence that reminded everyone why they fell in love with him in the first place. And then almost immediately after, he was sitting on a couch in a vacation house arguing about which bedroom he got to sleep in. That contrast is everything. That contrast is the whole story. The premise of Episode 1 is deceptively simple. BTS takes a group trip together. They arrive at a house with 3 bedrooms for 7 people, which means room sharing is inevitable, and the question of who ends up with whom is treated with the kind of strategic seriousness usually reserved for military operations or investment decisions. 7 grown men, 3 rooms, and absolutely 0 coordination. The way it unfolds is exactly what long-time fans expected, and somehow still delivered beyond expectations. The members scatter. They pick rooms. And through a combination of bad luck, miscommunication, and pure chaotic randomness, the distribution ends up like this. RM, Suga, V, and J-Hope somehow all end up claiming the same room. For people, 1 room. None of them apparently paying attention to what any of the others were doing. Meanwhile, Jungkook wanders into a separate room and finds himself completely alone, which, if you have watched any amount of BTS content, is a perfectly Jungkook outcome. He walked in, he picked a room, and it just happened to be uncontested. And then there is Jimin. Jimin ended up sharing a room with Jin. Now on the surface, this is just a funny logistical outcome of a poorly coordinated room assignment system. But if you have been following BTS for a while, you know that room assignments on Run BTS have never been just room assignments. They are character reveals. They are relationship barometers. And the fact that Jimin and Jin landed in the same room tells you something interesting. Jin, if you remember, has been through his own remarkable arc. He was the first to enlist and the first to be discharged. While the others were still serving, Jin launched Run Jin, his own solo variety spin-off that ran through mid-2025. Jin came back to civilian life, spent time reconnecting with ARMY through that show, and by the time the rest of BTS completed their service, he had already recalibrated his rhythm. He was ready for the group comeback, maybe more ready than anyone. Jimin, on the other hand, came back from military service into one of the most intense stretches of his career. Muse. The World Tour. The Arirang era. Tokyo Dome. The pace of everything Jimin has done since discharge has been extraordinary. And in the middle of all of that, the performances, the press, the Billboard numbers, the conversations about his artistry that have spread way beyond the K-pop space into mainstream music discourse. What does Jimin actually look like when the cameras are rolling but the stage is gone? That is what episode 1 answers. And the answer is this: Jimin looks exactly like himself. There is a version of the story where someone who has been through what Jimin has been through over the past 2 years comes back to a group variety setting and is slightly different. More guarded, more aware of his public image, more measured in the way he moves through the world. The fame does that to people. The scrutiny does that to people. When every single thing you do is analyzed, clipped, translated, posted, debated, and celebrated across a dozen different languages and fandoms simultaneously, it changes how you exist in unscripted moments. But that is not what happened in episode 1 of Run BTS 2.0. What happened is that Jimin walked into that house and immediately became the version of himself that ARMY has always loved most. Not the performer, not the chart topper, not the Rolling Stone cover subject, but the person. The one who is warm and a little mischievous and completely present in the room he is actually in. When the room chaos was unfolding, when 4 of his members were somehow cramming into a single bedroom and Jungkook was being Jungkook alone in his private suite, Jimin's energy was notably different from the surrounding noise. While others were loud about the situation, Jimin was observant. He watched. He reacted. And when he reacted, it landed. That is a specific skill that does not get talked about enough in conversations about what makes someone magnetic on camera. It is not always about being the loudest voice or the most dramatic presence. Sometimes it is about being the person in the room whose reactions you most want to see because you trust that whatever they are feeling is genuine. Jimin has always been that person on Run BTS. Go back to the original series, the 100+ episodes of chaos and games and missions, and you will notice that some of the most shared moments, some of the most beloved clips, are not the big performance moments. They are the quiet reaction shots. The way Jimin laughs, the way he covers his mouth when he is trying not to lose it, the way he will turn to the person next to him in the middle of something happening and just look at them like, "Are you seeing this too?" That did not go anywhere during the hiatus. If anything, it got sharper. There is something to be said about what military service does to a person's sense of presence. Whatever your thoughts on the policy itself, the lived experience of mandatory service strips away a lot of the ego scaffolding that builds up around public figures. You are not a celebrity in the barracks. You are a soldier. You have responsibilities that have nothing to do with your discography or your streaming numbers. And when you come back from that, when you step back into the world of stages and cameras and global attention, you carry a different kind of groundedness with you. You can see it in how Jimin carries himself in episode 1. There is an ease to him that feels earned rather than performed. He is not trying to be charming, he just is. He is not trying to create moments, they just happen around him. The pillow fight that broke out later in the episode is a perfect example of this dynamic. What started as a zombie game to decide who would clean up after dinner, classic Run BTS energy, by the way, turning a mundane domestic task into a whole competitive scenario, escalated, as these things always do, into something louder and more physical and significantly more entertaining than anyone planned. And in that chaos, in that late-night vacation house energy where everyone is a little punchy and the rules of normal social interaction have been suspended, Jimin was exactly where he needed to be. Not the instigator, not the one desperately trying to be funny, just present, reactive and real. The kind of presence that makes the people around him funnier and more themselves, which is maybe the most underrated quality a person can have in a group dynamic. It is worth stepping back here and talking about what Run BTS has always meant within the larger context of BTS's relationship with ARMY. Because this is not just a variety show. It never has been. Run BTS is, in a very real way, the document of who BTS actually is. Not the carefully constructed public image, the real thing. The friendships, the inside jokes, the dynamics that only emerge when 7 people who have known each other for over a decade are given permission to just exist together without an agenda. When the show went on hiatus in 2023, ARMY lost that document. Yes, there were other content drops, Weber's posts, behind-the-scenes footage from tours, interviews. But none of it replicated what Run BTS did, which was give you consistent, unfiltered access to the group dynamic over time. You could track how the relationships shifted. You could watch Jimin and Jungkook exist in the same space and understand their dynamic not from what they said in interviews, but from how they moved around each other when the cameras were rolling but nothing was scripted. 3 years of that was gone, and its absence was felt in ways that are hard to articulate unless you were one of the people feeling it. So when Run BTS 2.0 Episode 1 dropped, it was not just a new piece of content. It was the return of that document, and everything that happened in that episode, every room assignment, every reaction shot, every moment where Jimin turned to Jin in their shared room and did whatever Jimin and Jin do when they are just 2 people hanging out, all of it was being read by fans as information, as evidence, as confirmation or complication of everything they had been building in their heads during the 3 years the show was dark. What did Episode 1 confirm about Jimin specifically? A few things worth naming clearly. First, it confirmed that the growth that happened during his solo era did not make him a different person. It made him a more fully realized version of the same person. The Jimin of Muse and the Tokyo Dome performances is not a different Jimin from the one laughing on a couch in a vacation house. He is the same person, and that continuity is actually remarkable. A lot of artists who reach the commercial and critical heights Jimin has reached in the past 2 years undergo some kind of visible shift in how they present themselves in casual settings. The fame becomes its own kind of armor. With Jimin, the armor never went on. Or if it did, he took it off the moment he walked through that door. Second, it confirmed that the Jin and Jimin dynamic, which has been a fan favorite for years, which has generated entire analysis threads and retrospective compilations and emotional YouTube essays, is still exactly what it looks like from the outside. These are 2 people who are genuinely easy with each other. There is no performance in how they interact. They are just 2 people who like each other, who make each other laugh, who have been through enough together that the comfort between them is bone deep. Third, and maybe most importantly for anyone thinking about the larger picture of BTS in 2026, Episode 1 confirmed that the group dynamic is intact. Not just present, intact. 3 years of separation, different solo trajectories, individual careers that have taken each member to very different places emotionally and artistically, all of it could have changed the way 7 people exist in the same room. But it did not. Or if it did, the changes were integrative rather than fracturing. They came back to this vacation house, and they were still them. Still BTS. Still the group that generates a specific kind of energy when all 7 are together that none of them can generate alone. For ARMY, that might be the most important thing this episode communicated. Not the room assignments, not the zombie game, not the pillow fight, as iconic as it already is becoming. The most important thing was the proof, visible, unambiguous, documented, that the band is still the band. Now let's talk about the bigger context, because Episode 1 does not exist in isolation. It exists within the most significant stretch of BTS activity in years. Arirang came out in March. It debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200. Swim hit the top of the Hot 100. The world tour is selling out stadiums across North America, Europe, and South America. BTS in 2026 is operating at a level of scale that even their most ambitious pre-hiatus work did not fully anticipate. And into all of that momentum, into that specific moment of peak commercial and cultural relevance, they chose to bring back Run BTS. Not a documentary, not a press event, not another carefully produced piece of content designed to generate streams or ticket sales. They brought back the show that has always existed primarily to remind everyone that behind the world-class performances and the chart records and the stadium tours, there are 7 actual people who like going on trips together and arguing about who has to do the dishes. That choice says something. It says that even at this level of success, BTS still understands something fundamental about what built their connection with fans. It was never just the music. It was never just the performances. It was always the combination, the art and the humanity, the stage and the vacation house, the Tokyo Dome and the zombie game. Run BTS 2.0 is not a nostalgia play. It is a continuation of a philosophy that has guided BTS since 2015, which is the belief that showing up as fully human is not in tension with being extraordinary. It is the source of it. Jimin embodies that philosophy better than almost anyone. Watch him in any performance context: Tokyo Dome, Goyang Stadium, the Arirang comeback stage, and you are watching someone operating at the absolute limits of what performance can be. The precision, the emotion, the physical commitment, the vocal control. Everything is at the maximum. And then watch him in episode 1 of Run BTS 2.0, sitting in a vacation house, sharing a room with Jin, reacting to the improbable fact that 4 of his fellow group members have all somehow chosen the same bedroom, and you are watching the same person. Not a lesser version, not a downtime version. The same person. Because for Jimin, being fully present in a goofy variety show is not a gear shift from being a world-class performer. They are expressions of the same core quality, which is the complete willingness to be exactly where he is. That is what this episode is actually about. Not just the trip, not just the rooms, not just the games. It is about what happens when you stop performing and just exist, and what it means when someone's existence is still magnetic even without the stage. Run BTS 2.0 is 3 years in the making. It is the product of military service and solo eras and individual growth, and the particular kind of reunion energy that only happens when people who love each other have been apart long enough to miss it. Episode 1 gave us the vacation house. Episode 2 is coming April 30th. Episode 3 follows on May 5th. But if you want to understand what this show is going to mean, not just as content, not just as entertainment, but as a document of who BTS is in 2026, start with Jimin in episode 1. Start with the way he moved through that house, through that chaos, through the room assignments and the games and the pillow fight, as exactly himself. No armor, no performance, no gap between the person who stood at Tokyo Dome and the person who ended up sharing a room with Jin, because that is just how the math worked out. That is the story. That has always been the story. 7 people, fully human, fully committed to each other, and to the fans who have never stopped waiting. Run BTS is back. And if episode 1 is any indication, it never really left. If you are not already subscribed, this is the moment. We're going to be breaking down every episode of Run BTS 2.0 as it drops, alongside everything happening with BTS and Jimin throughout the Arirang World Tour. Episode 2 lands April 30th. We will be here. Thank you for watching. Army, we are finally home.